Wonderful. Okay, good morning, girls. Welcome to Sisterhood. It's so nice to see you. And we have got a bunch of girls gathered in the room today. We did say last week we would gather, and we are very excited to have a bunch of them. You maybe can't see them, but could you just shout out and say, "We're here"? Woo! Sisterhood is back, so it's really excited to gather again, and we just want to welcome you wherever you're watching. If you're one of those beautiful young mums with all those babies at home and those toddlers that are running around and they're maybe watching Peppa Pig on the iPad just now so that you can watch us, we want to welcome you. We want to come into your living room and welcome you. And I've already welcomed the girls here, and we're just going to get started. We're going to start this little series. We're just going to go for the next 5 weeks about your senses. And it is, what are your senses? You know, it's funny, as you know, I'm a teacher in primary school, and we have started this term, we're talking about our senses. And so I thought, I'd had it on my heart anyways to speak about this, but when I realized it was part of the primary 2 curriculum, because I was in primary 1 last year, I thought, okay, let's just go with the flow. So we're not making any visual aids, okay? Apart from this one. Anyways, we've got 5 senses. You know, your sight, your hearing, your taste, your touch, and your, what is it again? Your touching, feeling, smelling. I always forget the smelling one. Anyways, we all have these senses. And God has blessed us with these things to smell and look and gaze upon His beauty. And you know something? I don't know if you woke up this morning and thanked the Lord for your senses, but quite often we get up in the morning and we actually don't thank Him for what we just take for granted every single day. We get up and we just go about our business. Only when something starts failing do we start realizing, you know, I've had a sore back sometimes, and I never thank the Lord for my back. And then suddenly when my back goes out, I'm like, oh God, from now on, every day, if you heal me, I'm just going to thank the Lord for my back. And you know, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, every day, it's the first thing I think about, and it's the first thing I thank the Lord for. And then I get used to it, and I get used to that blessing. And it's a little bit like that with our senses, you know. I didn't get up this morning and thank the Lord for my senses, but you know, we need to be really grateful. Anyways, so there's the one I'm going to talk about today is, what do you see? What are you looking at? How is your sight? And I was going to ask all the girls, how is your sight? Although I'm looking at the camera because I'm looking at YouTube for you girls, I am going to gaze around the room. So if I'm not directly focusing on there, it's because I'm looking at all these beautiful faces looking at me, okay? Anyways, so sometimes with our, like I said, you know, if you have your glasses, if you have your sight, you don't appreciate it. And you know, I always had 20/20 vision. In fact, when I was a little girl, I was desperate for glasses. And as you know, my parents were missionaries, and I grew up abroad, and my dad was working in a little hospital, which was an eye hospital, because the country I lived in had lots of eye diseases. And so in this place, you know, there was always bags of glasses that people would gather in this country and send out to the missionaries. And so I went in one day and I stole a pair of glasses. I think they were cat's eyes, you know, the ones from the 60s, with really thick lenses. And I got these, and I remember turning up to school and saying, I wear glasses now. I think I was a real attention seeker, sadly. But anyways, so I then got my glasses on, and when I put them on, I could see nothing. The lenses were so thick. So for about 2 or 3 days, I would stare at the board, memorize it, and then say, oh, I can't see. And I would put these ridiculous glasses on, go, oh, yes, I can see it. And I would copy things down. And really, I was faking it. I was one of those kids that really thought about the first step, but I never thought about the next step. And of course, being in a missionary place, you know, they all go to church, you know. So on Sunday, my teacher said to my mom and dad, oh, I didn't realize Elizabeth wears glasses. She doesn't. So that was the end of my glass wearing day. So I was always wanting to wear glasses. Until, you know, in my 20s and 30s, I never had glasses. And then suddenly I started realizing that my arms were growing longer, you know. You're always stretching and pulling things further until my arms couldn't grow any longer. And I thought, I need reading glasses. And I found reading glasses, and I started wearing them. And you know something? You know, I only now appreciate all those years I had great sight. And I never really appreciated it then. And I really do now, because I am lost without my reading glasses. That's why I keep buying these ones from Poundland. They're all over the place, not my house. Anyways, so that's what happens. But you know, my reading glasses, it didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't like an accident. It wasn't like something happened. It wasn't like I picked up a book and couldn't read it one day, you just kind of start adjusting things and adjusting things until you can't adjust it anymore. Then you gradually do it. And I want to talk about spiritual sight today. Because, often it's not when you just suddenly fall or you suddenly sin or something. Sometimes backsliding is a gradual process. It's when something just slowly happens. You kind of miss that Bible, you miss the prayer meeting, you miss the Bible, so you miss that connection. And before you know it, you have kind of lost your sight. It wasn't a sudden thing. It was just something that happened quite quickly. Quite silently and slowly. And I think sometimes we can slowly drift from very good sight to poor sight. That was my experience anyways. And so then I had to figure it out. And it's the same with spiritual sight. Sometimes we can drift and we can lose our sense of purpose. And some of us, if in the natural, some of you are far-sighted, some of you are short-sighted. I think, if I get this right, if you're, I won't explain, but I think short-sighted is that right, when you can't see short? Yeah, and you need reading glasses? And far-sighted, no, it's the opposite. Yeah, it's the opposite. Okay, sorry people online, it is the opposite. But some of us can be far-sighted, some of us can be short-sighted. Some of us can see really clearly in the distance, I can, but close up, trying to pluck my eyebrows is a disaster. I need it's really, I can't see close. But for many years, some of us, you can see close, but you can't see anything at the other side. And that's what it's like. Sometimes spiritually, it's like that. Sometimes we see the people close by. We're focused on our family. We're focused on our world. And we forget to pray for abroad. We forget to pray for out there. Some of us are looking so much out there and going, oh God, someday send me as a wonderful missionary. And we forget that near us are people that are lost, and we need to see them, okay? So there's 3 things I just wanted to talk about this morning, and there's no clock in here, which is a bit annoying, so I hope I stick to 30 minutes, okay? So anyways, there's 3 things. The first thing is looking back with gratitude. The second thing will be looking around us, and the third thing is looking ahead, okay? Very simple. Looking back with gratitude. And I just wanted to say from the beginning, as girls who love Jesus, we should waken up every single day and we should thank him for our salvation. How many times do I forget? And then I'm at church and I'm at communion and we think, oh, this is our time to look back. No, every day we should be looking back and thinking, that's where I've come from. Because of Calvary, we must never, ever lose the wonder of Calvary, lose the wonder of who he is, lose the wonder of what he's done for us. And I think the first thing we need to do with our spiritual sight is to look back with wonder, look back with gratitude, and never, ever forget what God has done for us. And sometimes there's different ways of looking back. Sometimes we look back with longing. And sometimes, you'll hear older people saying, oh, the good old days. And someone once said, there's nothing good about the good old days because they were really tough days. And we spend sometimes our lives looking back with longing or, some of us older ones, we look at some of the young mums go, oh, my kids never did this, my kids never did that. And we're like, let's get a reality check. We did have the sleepless nights. We did have a hard time. Yes, we made huge mistakes, and we want to remember that we made many mistakes because we want to remember to encourage you. And so sometimes looking back with longing, like remember Lot's wife looked back with longing. And when you look back with longing, you sometimes look back with rose-tinted glasses as what was or what you thought was, Sometimes we can look back with bitterness. And we can look back with pain, and we can look back, and it's really painful to look back, and it causes so much distress in our lives. And sometimes when we look back, we allow bitterness to come within us, and we become very bitter, and we become angry, and sometimes that's not good either. So instead of looking back with longing and looking back with bitterness, I think, I loved this story in the Bible. It just reminded me in Luke when Jesus was told the parable about, asking people to come and we're like, oh, Lord, I would love to serve you, but. I would love to serve you, but. And I just wanted to read this here. It says, still another said to him, I'm reading from Luke chapter 9, Lord, I really want to follow you, but first let me go home and say goodbye to my entire family. Jesus responded, why do you keep looking backwards to your past and have second thoughts about following me. When you turn back, you are useless to God's kingdom. And I think if we spend our time looking back with longing, or looking back with regret, or looking back, we're just never going to be able to look forward. It often speaks about pressing forward and moving on. So one of the things we must remember is constantly, if we do look back at our past, go, you know what? I choose to now, thank you for my past, but I choose to now look at Calvary through my past. I want to look back at his sacrifice, his total defeat of sin, his redeeming love, that he opened a way, that he has made a way for me to be in heaven with him. So when you look back with a gratitude like that, it makes things so much different. And in Hebrews 12, I really like the way it said it here, you know, thinking about keeping our focus, keeping our salvation story up to date. In Hebrews 12, it says, verse 2, it says, as for us, we have all a great cloud of witnesses who encircle us like clouds. So we must let go of every wound that has pierced us. That's looking back with pain. And every sin that we so easily fall into, that's looking back with longing. Then it says in Hebrews, then we will be able to run life's marathon race with passion and determination, for the path has already been marked out before us. We look away from the natural realm and we fasten our gaze onto Jesus, who birthed faith within us and who leads us forward into faith's perfection. His example is this, because his heart was focused on the joy of knowing that you would be his. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's a Passion Translation. And you know, sometimes I like reading different translations because sometimes we become so familiar with the passage we read or so familiar with the words we have. And I just love that because he was looking forward to you and I sitting here, he endured the cross. So the first point, let's look back with gratitude. The second point is looking at those around us. I don't know about you, but in our family, we have some people who can look at an old house and they can look at it and go, it is too much work. I cannot imagine anything else. And they would only like to move into a flat that's newly decorated and beautiful. It's funny, when my mom was moving house, I went around lots of flats and she was like, oh no, I didn't like the color of the carpet. And I'm like, but you could change that. You know, she couldn't see a vision. She just saw what she saw, you know? And whereas some of us can look at things and go, yep, I can tear that wall down, build this up, push this out. I'm one of those people that can actually see a different thing. We all have different ways of seeing things. And I love watching Escape to the Chateau. I love watching Grand Designs. And these people, I admire them. They go to France, they buy these dilapidated chateaus, and they look absolutely awful. They're infested with bats and everything. And they can see a different vision, okay? Helen Keller was a woman, American woman. She was born blind and deaf and dumb, actually. She couldn't speak, but the reason she couldn't speak is because she couldn't hear the language. But she was an incredible woman, and she became a Christian. She was a wonderful, godly woman. But there's a beautiful quote that she says, Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf, was once asked, is there anything worse than not having your sight? And she said, oh, yes, there is. It's having sight, but having no vision. Okay? So looking around, what do we see when we look around? You know, I'm going to read out these names to you, and you should see how I've written them down here. I've written them the way I would pronounce them, okay? I just want to say, do you know, tell me if you know these people's names. Shammua, Shaphat, Igal, Palti, Gadiel, Amiel, Gadi, Seth-ur, Nabi, and Juel. I don't think any of you would know who they are. But if I said to you Joshua and Caleb, you would instantly recognize that must have been the 10 spies. And you know, those 12 spies were sent out. And those 12 spies weren't just any people. They were the leaders of their tribes. They were the leaders of Israel at the time. So they had great vision, great sight, okay? That's what we think. And they were the ones who were sent out. We don't know their names. We just know them as the little story. You know, 10 were bad, 2 were good. You know, the little song we used to sing. 12 men went to spy in Canaan, 10 were bad, 2 were good. We used to sing that song. And I never knew those names until I was doing this little study. And these people, I'm just going to recap, Israel is down in Egypt, and then God raises Moses up, and Moses is asking, I spoke about him last week, Moses is bringing the people out. So the people are out, and they've been given great promises. The people have seen amazing things. As people have seen the plagues, they've walked through the dry ground and across the sea. They have done some amazing, amazing things. And God has said, I am taking you to a promised land. You are going to a special place. And so it says in the Bible, these leaders for 40 days went and spied out the land. 40 days, that's a long time. That's almost 6 weeks. They got the privilege of wandering through the beautiful land of Israel. They saw the land, they saw the mountains, they saw the cities, they saw the rivers, they saw the produce, they saw everything. And then it says they came back. And this is what they say. They went straight to Moses to give them the report. And this is what it says. The 12 spies went, they said, oh, Moses, yes, the land does indeed flow with milk and honey. The grapes and the produce of the land are fantastic. They even brought back pomegranates and grapes to show them, look what's growing there. Remember, these people are in a desert, so it's like, wow, their eyes popped open. It was fantastic. It is a beautiful place. There was figs. There was all sorts of things there, great waters, great place to build our houses. We saw houses, we saw great places. And then there came a but. And the but was, but there's giants there, but we can't go there. And sometimes, so often, we allow the but to govern our lives. We can see things, we have vision for things, but we allow the but, and we allow ourselves to talk ourselves out of things. We allow other people to talk us out of things. And so what I would say to you is, the sad thing is, they just would not go. They were just so scared. And those 10 spies created so much fear. And fear is a natural thing. Fear is something that has we know that fear has poured throughout our whole country. Every time you switch the news on, they don't want to share good stories. They want to share fearful stories that turn you up, that make you anxious, that make you worried. And so we understand what fear is. We even understand it more now. And so there was 2 wonderful spies. Joshua and Caleb said, no, but we can see different. We can see this. And their wonderful reports were put aside, and everybody panicked about the report of these 10. And it's interesting how it says in the Bible, a little bit of thing can just infect. I can't remember what it says, but something like, a little bit of lemon juice and water completely distorts the taste, doesn't it? A little bit of something, you put something wrong in it, a little bit of poison, and it completely corrupts everything. So they had corrupted what God had wanted to see them, And I just think it's so interesting that, for 40 years, we know the story, they all wandered around. And 40 years later, we now see Caleb, he's 85 years old, and it says Caleb went in and he said, God, give me this mountain. And he took down those giants. He's now 40 years older. It says he was about 85, and he went in there and he was not fearful. For 40 years, he wandered around saying, one day I'm going to go there. One day I am going to be there because God has promised me. And so he never lost sight of his vision, even though for 40 years he had the same punishment as everyone else. I always think they kept a beautiful spirit. They could have become bitter, but they didn't. And I just wanted to say, do you have sight or vision for your life? Do you have sight or vision? So I wanted to say a few things here. Sight says, if you just have sight says, I'm getting a little bit older. There's just not much I can do. I used to serve God, but you know what? I'm just going to relax a little bit. I'm just going to take it easy, and I'll just watch all the young people do things. Vision says, I have got more time to give the Lord, and I've got more time to study His Word, and I've got more time. I'm not up through the night with babies. I'm just up for the toilet. I'm not up, but vision says I have more life in me, and I am going to keep running. I'm going to keep focused. I'm going to keep going, no matter what happens. I was loving. We were watching this. I shared that story last week, but we were at prayer on Monday night, and I said, "So, Mom, we're going to be coming to prayer," and she said, Yeah, I'll be there. I'll come. Sign me up, And she'd heard about the prayer app. And she goes, oh, what is that? She said, well, I'll tell you what. If you can mark it out for me, I'm going to walk all the little streets she lives, in the Hilton campus. I'm going to walk all those streets and I'll write down the streets I walk, and then you can put them on the app and you can turn them blue. And you see, that's someone that still has vision for this city, that still is running, that still is thinking. She's not going to sit back and go, well, I don't have that app. She's got her way around that app, okay? So that's a difference between sight and vision. Do you have sight or vision for your church? Sight says, we seem to be doing great. Let's just keep things the way they are. Why change? Vision says there is a city out there to be reached. There are neighbors and places out there that we need to find. There are people out there that are hurting emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and I need to keep my vision going. I need to keep praying and seeking that God will bring them in. And do you have sight for your city or vision? Sight says, let's just stay here and get comfortable. King Street was comfortable. I love that building, and it was comfortable. Vision says, you know what? Let's move to a bigger place. And some of you younger people watching online, maybe you have a vision that actually this will just be one of many campuses. Why not? I was thinking last year, if we grew the church to 2,000 people. Okay, let's say the church is 1,000. Let's say the church doubles. That is only 1% of the population of Aberdeen. 1%. If we were to if suddenly we got, I think the new Tekka building, which has replaced this, I think it can hold 12,000 people. Well, that's 5% of the population. It seems massive to us, but it's a drop in the ocean. And if God is going to move, if God is going to do things, he's going to move through you and through me. He's going to move through prayer. He's going to move when we say, I don't want just one sight. I want to have vision. Okay? And so I remember, and I've said this to you before, I can remember in Florida in 2008, queuing to go to a church service. And I was like, oh, for goodness sakes, Ian, we're going to be late. And I hate being late for anything. And when we got to the front, there was a policeman directing the traffic. And actually, I had never been in a queue to go to church before. And something landed within me. And I felt sad inside, but I also started crying. And I thought, God, will we ever queue to come to church in Scotland? Will we have bigger buildings that people can come to? And something was birthed in me that God could grow big churches across a pond in Scotland, So whatever is birthed in you, hold on to it, pray about it, and speak into it, and live it out as if that is your purpose and calling, your vision. And So that's what I want to say about that, and I'll just move on to the third thing. I'm just scared about time here. So I just wanted to say, okay, girls. So looking back with gratitude towards Calvary, at His power and His strength and His salvation, make sure that when we look around at ourselves, we're not just looking with sight, but we're looking with vision. And the third thing, which is a short thing I want to speak about, is always keeping an eternal perspective. Okay, we are passing through this world. We are not putting down roots here forever. This is a journey as we pass through. If you have a piece of paper and you put a dot on it, it looks really tiny. But imagine if your whole life was just that dot compared to eternity. I remember watching a movie, I think it was Bug's Life or something, and it's all about, all the little bugs and the ants and everything, and you get so involved, and at the very end, the camera lifts off and you realize all of this film, all of this movie happened in one tiny little lily pad on a big pond. And when it pulled back, you just saw a little dot. And that's what our life is like. And sometimes we forget we have enlarged the dot and we are just so comfortable with it. But actually, it's just so small that what we're going to live like in eternity is going to be so huge. So always keep our perspective on there. We want to lift the children, the babies in this room, we want to lift them on our shoulders. And I can remember when Daniel couldn't see things, Ian lifted him on his shoulder and said, can you see now, Daniel? And he goes, yeah, Dad, I can see. Because actually, with lifting children on our shoulders, they can see further than we can actually see. And so our young people, our young adults, our youth, our babies, we want to lift them on our shoulders, not physically, but just say, you know what? You've got a dream. I want you to go for your dream. I want you to think about it. Yeah, go for it. I'll pray for you. I don't know if I've got the skill to help you, but I can pray for you, and I'll commit to do that for you, and that's what will happen. Okay? To see further. And we can look in the Bible and we can look at those biblical characters and say, oh my goodness, we know the whole story now. But when they were living their lives, they only got to see where they were living. But we can see the whole picture, and we can get so much encouragement from their story about our eternal perspective, We can look at past leaders. We can read stories about people in the past, and we can encourage ourselves. You know what? Life is short. It does move. And the older I get, the more I realize life is very short. I can remember my grandmother said that to me, and I thought, seriously? It seems so long. I'm 18 years old, and, a whole week takes a long time to pass. And now I'm suddenly like, wow, is it a new month already, Life passes fast, so make the most of it, always keeping an eternal perspective, And I just wanted here to just finish with Ezekiel 37. And the story, God takes Ezekiel up and takes him to this valley of dry bones. And he looks at them and he says, Ezekiel, what do you see? And he says, I see bones. And they weren't just any bones. They weren't just bones that had just come off a chicken, they didn't have any flesh on them. It says they were white, they were sun bleached, they were very, very dry. There was absolutely no life in them. And God speaks to him and says, what do you see? And he says, well, I just see bones. And he said, Ezekiel, can these bones live? And he said, I don't know. You tell me, God, can these bones live? And he goes, yeah, I want you to prophesy to the bones. So he gathers himself and says, okay, bones, and he gives a prophecy. I wonder how much faith he had. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. I might have said it just because out of obedience, but did I really believe it? And then he says, then you hear this rattling and everything gathers, but they're just lying like corpses because there's no life in them. And then God says again, Ezekiel, breathe into command them, prophesy into them, breathe into them, speak into their destiny. And then he speaks into it. And then it says, so I spoke the message that God commanded me, and breath came into their bodies. They all came alive, and they stood up on their feet, a great army. Then God said to me, Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel, okay? These bones, girls, represent the people of Aberdeen in Scotland. They are saying, we have become old dry bones. All hope is gone. Our nation is finished. But God can change that situation if we keep our perspective and our vision there. What do we want to see in our nation? Can we believe a different future for Aberdeen? Can we believe a different future for Scotland? When I was just thinking, we were talking about cathedrals, and cathedrals are buildings that take years and years. Some cathedrals build, it can take 2 or 3 generations to complete. So when they were designing them, they weren't designing them for themselves, they were designing them for the future. The other day, Ian and I were watching the news, and they were talking about this new rail link, is it the HS2 or something like that, that's going to go from London to Birmingham and then all the way up north, and it's going to be this fast link. And he said the first stage has started from London to Birmingham. It's going to be ready in 2030. And I thought, wow. And I thought, oh, that's great. And I thought, what if I'm not around in 2030? I'll be 70 then. I'm like, seriously. I just hadn't thought. And they said, and then we don't have a date for the next section. You see, they're not building, they were speaking to people, they're not building for this, they're building for what they see in the future. They're building for what's coming, And I can remember when they started digging, some of you older ladies my age, you'll remember digging the Channel Tunnel. And I remember thinking, that's going to take forever. That's just not possible. They talked about it for years. And now we get all the benefits from it because we just go on it. We don't even think twice. But someone had a vision, someone had a dream, someone had a determination, and it wasn't going to be that it was going to benefit just them, it was going to benefit the next generation. And that's what it is as Christ followers. We're always looking to do that, So I would say to you, how is your sight today? I know my mom had a cataract operation, and again, her sight, it got dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and she's like, I just can't see. She was using a torch, she was using a big magnifying glass, and then she went along and she had an operation just before lockdown, which was fantastic, on one of her eyes. And she said, oh my goodness, I can see so clearly now. And you know, sometimes with our spiritual eyes, we need to just say, things are dimmer, things are a little bit duller. I need to come back to Jesus. I need to just say to him, Lord, correct my sight. Can you fix it for me? Can you just do that cataract operation? Can I just get some disciplines in my life? And this can be one of your disciplines. This can be a discipline. You think, you know, I'm going to make this a rock in my world. I'm going to come, I'm going to listen, I'm going to grow, and I'm going to pray. And I'm going to write down prayer requests from the girls I chat to, and I'm going to commit to pray for them. And when I see them the next week, I'm going to say, so how did that go? What was going on there? Okay? So remember that. And I loved, you know, in Mark, you know, Jesus said to the blind man, you know, what you see, you know, what you want me to do for you? And he said, I just want to see, Lord. And Jesus said, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Your sight is restored. All at once, the man's eyes were opened and he could see again. And he began at once to follow Jesus, walking down the road. And it can be as instant as that when Jesus heals your sight, or it can be something where Jesus just does a work, a slow, gradual work, but it just takes a step of faith. It took me to say, I need reading glasses. My arms, I've done it so long. I need to go and get those glasses. I need to correct my vision. I need to go and see the doctor about my cataract. I need to do this. I need to sort things out, okay? So that's all I wanted to say. Girls, how is your eyesight this morning? You know, if you are looking back with pain and longing, remember, look to Calvary and thank him daily. Check your sight and your vision of those around you and keep that eternal perspective, because that's what it's all about. Okay? Good to see you, and we just want to close this up, and thank you for joining us online. And we just want to say, I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe someday, you know, when we get the creche started, you'll be able to come back. And some of you maybe have joined and you maybe were anxious or you weren't able to come today. There are spaces here. We are quite socially distanced, and if maybe you can't see, but all the girls are wearing masks to protect us, because we love each other. We want to protect ourselves, and we have already prayed and asked the Lord to keep us safe in this pandemic. God bless you. Check your eyesight. Thank you.